Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. I do want to share with you something that I'm working on. It's a very simple project. I'm going to be using 3 different fabrics, a light, a medium, and a dark. I'm actually using some Easter fabrics because I do receive so many fabrics from people as gifts that keep getting added to my stash. I wanted to use this up and make a really quick, fun Easter quilt for a child. You could simply use your scrap stash, and I'm going to show you that as well. It's called an Easy Peasy quilt. I'll have this PDF linked in the description box below, and it's just a simple 9-patch. That's all it is, but it's got some of these diagonal striped rows going through it, which adds interest to a simple 9-patch block. I'm going to show you how you can use your scrap stash as well. Now, this block can be made in 2 different sizes. I am making 12.5-inch blocks. They're huge blocks, so they're nice, big blocks. I've also got the PDF where you can make 9.5-inch unfinished blocks. So the 2 blocks, the 9-patch or the half-square triangle for either size quilt, can be made either 9.5-inch blocks or 12.5-inch blocks. The quilt sizes are obviously going to be different. I'm using this, you can use the same number of squares, or you can use a whole lot more. You can make this a king size, a queen size, a lap size, whatever you like. If you have 3.5-inch squares in your stash, you can certainly make those 9.5-inch blocks. If you have 4.5-inch squares in your stash, you can make the 12.5-inch blocks. I had a lot of 4.5-inch squares, so I have made up a sample of the 9-patch using 4 mediums, 4 lights, and 1 dark. And so this red fabric, I'm going to try and find as many squares in my stash that are very, very similar to this color and darkness so that it gives a uniformity to the inside of that 9-patch. And then I did go to my stash. I always shop in my stash whenever possible. And I found a dark burgundy and a cream fabric. These are 13-inch squares, and I'm making half-square triangles. And that will really complement this scrappy block. So I'm going to be using those together to make the quilt. That's going to be the scrappy quilt. But now let's take a look at the Easter quilt that I have made here. I'm going to show you how to make these 2 blocks. I'm going to show you also how to pinwheel the seam allowances if you'd like to learn to do that. Both of these blocks are so easy. I'm sure many of you have already made blocks like this, but if you have not, stick around and I'll show you how each of these is done, and then I'll show you how the whole thing gets put together. All right, next I'm going to show you how I web my blocks and put them together. It's a great way to put blocks together. It's a great way to put quilts together, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. Before I do that, in case you're new to my channel and you're not familiar with this scrap stash and how you're putting things together into bins, etc., I want to just let you know there is a video link below in the description box, which corresponds to my speedy solutions to cut and organize your scrap stash. I encourage you to take a moment and go listen to that video. It walks you through everything in my techniques book here, teaches you how to cut, sort, organize, store, and then how to use your scrap stash. And then there's 5 scrappy patterns in here, and there's an additional 12 beautiful scrappy patterns in this patterns book, and that it all uses your scrap stash. So it's something to take a peek at, so watch that video. But now I want to talk to you about how to web the blocks together. Whenever I web a block together, and I really do enjoy putting them together this way, it helps me to keep everything in perfect alignment. It's not all messed up and out of order. But I always like to start in the upper left corner. I have this laid out next to my sewing machine, and then I will start up here. What you're going to do is take the next column, flip it on top, take it to your sewing machine, start sewing 1/4 inch down there. Take this one, flip it on top, bring it up to your sewing machine. You are not cutting the threads. You are webbing it together. Continue sewing the 1/4 inch seam. Take this last one, bring it on top of this one. Continue webbing that block by stitching that seam allowance. Now you have these first 2 columns stitched together. So I'm going to open it up and pretend they are sewn here. And I'll do this here in just a minute, but I want to explain the whole process. So now you've webbed these 2 columns together. Now you're going to come back over here and grab this one, place it on top, start stitching down, grab this one, and you bring all of these up to the machine as you're stitching. Continue webbing down here. And the same thing. Now you have the 3 columns are actually webbed together. So there's a line of thread that has webbed these two columns, 2 rows here together. And now you can finish sewing the balance of it together. And I came back and I flipped them up and sewed it and flipped it up and sewed it. So it's a very simple way to make sure that everything stays where it should be and you're not getting things accidentally messed up. I don't know how many times that has happened in the past where I've sewn something together only to find out that it wasn't sewn properly, something got out of order. So if you web this block or web all of your blocks where they're sitting right next to your sewing machine and you're doing one block at a time, it really will help you to make sure that they go together well. I'm going to go ahead and web these columns and I'll bring it back and show it to you. All right, so I have these webbed here. Actually, this is the correct way. So the thread has caught these seam allowances here, and so it is webbed in that regard. And now I'm going to flip them. I am going to nest my seams very easily, just nest and pin my seams. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to pinwheel that. So let me sew these and I'll show you how to pinwheel. The block has been stitched. It's completely finished. And now I'm going to show you how you can pinwheel those seam allowances. Now, because I webbed it, that means there's a little thread, which is like the last seam that's connecting everything. So I do need to just find that little thread and cut it, which I've done. Once I cut it, then I just twist my seam allowance. Sometimes you have to twist them one way and sometimes you twist it the other way. You can see already, there's the pinwheel right there. This one had to be twisted the other direction. And whoops, oh, you know what? That's not even gonna work. I've got to take that out. My seam flipped, so it's not gonna create a pinwheel. So I'm gonna have to remove that, fix it, and then I'll be able to pinwheel that. Let's go to the other side, see what we did over here. Let's look for the little threads that I have to clip. That's the last seam allowance that I had stitched. So that had to be cut. Okay, now let's twist. There's the pinwheel. Twist, there's the pinwheel. And I can take it to the iron and press all of that. But first, let me fix this. Then I'm going to take it to the iron and press it. I have the seams pinwheeled now. So you can see this little 4 different fabrics here in the seam allowance there in the corners. We're seeing the blues, the yellows, the pinks, etc. And that's how you pinwheel. It just makes a nice flat area for quilting. There's not a whole lot of fabric that's stuck on one side or the other. Sometimes when you nest fabrics to one side or the other, then you have like 4 different pieces on one side, and it really can create some issues when you're quilting. So that has been pinwheeled. They're nice and flat. That does mean that some of your darks are going to be end up being pressed toward the light. And that does happen because you have to follow however the pinwheel wants the pressing to go. In this case, it's all pressed this way around that pinwheel. In this case, it's being pressed this direction. And so some of them are going to be counterclockwise and some of them will be clockwise for pressing. So keep an eye on that. If they don't feel like they're moving properly, it's because you're trying to press them in the wrong direction. Now let's make this ginormous half square triangle. If you are making the 12.5-inch blocks, you will have cut 13-inch squares. You'll cut 13-inch width fabric strips and subcut them into 13-inch squares. And for every set of squares, I'm putting a light right sides together on top of the pink, light on a dark or light on a medium, whatever fabrics you're using. Putting them right sides together, I am going to take a blue marker, or you could use a pencil or whatever you choose, but I'm going to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other. Drawing this hopefully dark enough that you can see. And then I'm going to sew a scant 1/4 inch down one side and up the other side. And you can do this in assembly line fashion, chain piece, have all of them ready, all of them paired up, ready to go with their lines. And you can do each and every one of them all at the same time. And then we'll cut them apart. Let me grab the cream and white one so you can see the stitching that I've done. So here's the cream and the burgundy square. That's what I meant to say in the last clip. I have a 13-inch burgundy square matched up with a 13-inch cream square. Right sides together, I drew the line on the light side. I stitch a 1/4 inch away from a scant 1/4 inch away from each side of the drawn line, as you can see here. Right there it is. And then we're simply going to cut on that drawn line. And it's really important that you use a scant 1/4 of an inch when you're sewing on each side of that drawn line. Make sure that you're not eating up too much seam allowance. You got to take into consideration the turn of fabric. When this turns back and gets pressed, that's eating up a little bit of fabric as well. So a scant 1/4 of an inch, maybe a thread or two less than a 1/4 of an inch all the way up and down. And so I am going to simply cut this apart. Let me find my rotary cutter here. I'm following that blue line that I had drawn. There we go. So it's now cut. So for every pair of squares, you get 2 half square triangles. And here are my pink and then I'm going to square up each of these half square triangles to 12.5 inches. They must be 12.5 inches so they match my 9 patch, which is 12.5 inches. Or if you have created, if you're working on 9.5 inch blocks, then you would have pulled 10-inch squares, and then you're going to need to square each of your half square triangles down to 9.5 inches so that your half square triangles match your 9 patch, which would be 9.5 inches. Depends on what size you're using or making for your quilt. Each half square triangle must be squared up either to 12.5 or 9.5, depending on which size block you're making. There isn't a whole lot that has to be trimmed away, but it's imperative that this gets trimmed away or your quilt is not going to go together well. Every block needs to be squared up to its exact measurement. So now I have 12.5 inch half square triangles. I have 2 of these 9 patches. Here's one, here's the other. Now I'm going to add this 4th row to my quilt. I'll start out, I'll have a 9 patch on each end. I will have a couple of half square triangles that form this really pretty diagonal stripe right in here. And so I'm going to add this row next. So I have 4 rows put together. I really like how it's turning out. Right now it's a perfect square, which is great. You could leave it just like this for a baby quilt and then just add your borders. I do have 2.5 inch width of fabric strips cut for the first inside border, and then I cut 4.5 inch width of fabric strips for the outside border. But you can certainly make your borders any way you choose to. But here is how it is turned out with just 4 rows, 4 across, 4 down. I really like it. What a simple, simple quilt. And those diagonal fabrics going across, their stripes going across the quilt, really do add some interest. And then we see those pink triangles that are kissing in the center there with the 9 patch blocks. And it kind of looks like hourglass, pink hourglasses that are kissing there in the center. Kind of a unique look. But that is the quilt that I have so far. I do want to put 1 more row, maybe a couple more. We'll see how far I'll go. This is going to be for an older child, so I might make it a little bit longer than this perfect square here. But have fun with this. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll get to use up some of your 3.5 inch squares or your 4.5 inch squares, or maybe you have a light, medium, and a dark fabric that you'd like to use to try this pattern. Very simple. It's an easy peasy 9 patch with some diagonal rows running through. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed watching how to put this very simple quilt together. Don't forget to grab that PDF. It's in the description box below. I do link these YouTube video tutorials in my website as well, quiltingwithlori.com. So if you are watching YouTube on your television and can't access the description box, you can just go out to my website and go through my blogs, and you'll find this particular video, and the PDF will be linked there for you as well. And it will give you the information on how to put this, or what you need to cut and the fabrics that are required for this fun little easy peasy 9 patch. If you like the content that I provide, please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I love to hear from my subscribers. It really is a lot of fun to read all of your comments. And thank you so much to each and every one of you who helped me reach 15,000 subscribers. That took place on Sunday afternoon. I got home from church and I saw that my subscribers had gotten over the 15,000 mark. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate that. And hopefully you all enjoyed. And if you haven't subscribed, please don't forget to do that. So until next time, happy quilting.